Welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly excited to dive into today's topic with all of you because, let me tell you, absolutely nobody saw this coming. What started out as just another standard run-of-the-mill late-night television promotional stop instantly, and I mean instantly, transformed into one of the most raw, heartfelt, and genuinely memorable conversations ever captured on camera. Today, we are unpacking Seth Meyers' emotionally resonant, deeply revealing interview with the one and only global superstar Taylor Swift. Now, if you look closely at this interview, you'll realize pretty quickly that this wasn't just a standard Q&A about an album drop, not at all. It was a profound exploration of identity. It was a look at the suffocating weight of fame, and ultimately, it was about the unexpected, profound beauty of everyday life. We are going to trace an incredible, almost unbelievable journey together today. We are looking at a woman who transitioned from the absolute, chaotic, blinding heights of record-breaking stadium tours and nonstop global headlines to the deeply grounded, quiet peace she has finally found in her personal life alongside her husband, Travis Kelce. Believe me when I say this is a masterclass. It's a complete masterclass in understanding the delicate and frankly often painful balance between the glittering showgirl persona presented to the world and the genuine ordinary human being who is just trying to breathe behind closed doors. So let's get right into it. But listen, before we get into the deep emotional resonance and those really quiet, profound moments of this conversation, we have to start with the sheer hilarious absurdity of what it actually means to live the life of a global superstar. Seth, being the masterful interviewer he is, brought up a story that had actually been teased by actress Zoe Kravitz on his show previously. Here's the setup. Zoe and her mother, the iconic Bonet, had been invited to stay at Taylor's home after those devastating fires in California. Now, Seth wanted Taylor's exact, unfiltered version of a very particular incident involving a loose pet. And Taylor prefaced this beautifully by noting that, hey, we have all got that one chaotic friend, right? We all know someone like that. But the situation she found herself in was truly in a stratosphere of its own. She described receiving this frantic, confusing, absolutely panicked phone call from her head of security. He was desperately trying to explain this bizarre, unfolding disaster at her house. And her immediate, incredibly logical first question to her highly trained security team was simply, "What snake?" She was entirely blissfully unaware that there was even a snake on the premises. I mean, just imagine getting a panic call from your security about a massive loose snake in your own home when you had absolutely zero idea a snake was even living there. The visual she painted of this chaotic scene is pure, unadulterated comedy gold, and it perfectly captures the cinematic absurdity that constantly surrounds her on a daily basis. Seriously, picture the scene like you're a movie director setting up a shot. You have Zoe Kravitz and Bonet physically gripping the back half of a massive Burmese python that has somehow inexplicably managed to get itself firmly stuck halfway inside the actual architecture of a wall. Meanwhile, standing right next to these massive Hollywood stars, there is a man wielding an actual heavy-duty lumberjack axe, and he has just finished violently chopping up a custom, priceless, vintage antique cupboard, leaving jagged wooden splinters scattered all over this incredibly expensive floor. Taylor described this absurd tableau as looking exactly like a high-fashion YSL ad, or maybe a moody Annie Leibovitz photo shoot, noting that Zoe was just standing there amidst the total destruction, dressed flawlessly in head-to-toe the row. It was the absolute chicest disaster imaginable. But here is the true psychological torture of this whole story. Zoe knew Taylor well enough to know she absolutely shouldn't tell her about this architectural disaster until it was entirely resolved. So Taylor kept this frantic little countdown game going in her head, and it was a full 3 weeks, an agonizing 3-week secret before that damaged antique cupboard was fully repaired, repainted, and Zoe casually sat her down in the house to finally admit, hey, we had to take an axe to your living room because of a rogue python. You just cannot make this stuff up. Okay, moving on to section 1, SNL and early milestones. Let's take a look at where all of this started.
Seth expertly steered the conversation from the absolute laugh-out-loud absurdity of her current superstar life back to their shared history together. They specifically started looking back at the earnest, early career milestones of 2009. And you guys, this is absolutely crucial for understanding the foundation of her immense, undeniable work ethic. Long before the billion-dollar Eras Tour, long before the unprecedented global fame that she has today, she was just a young artist stepping onto one of the most intimidating, high-pressure stages in all of television comedy. Think back to 2009. At just 19 years old, she hosted Saturday Night Live for the very first time. During the interview, they reminisced so fondly about a specific Twilight parody sketch they collaborated on called Firelight. The whole twist of the sketch was that she wasn't in love with a vampire, but rather a Frankenstein, played just brilliantly by Bill Hader. Taylor actually laughed out loud during the interview about deploying this intense, smoldering, lip-biting acting for the role, looking back at that week as literally the most exciting thing that had ever happened to her up to that point. But here is the truly fascinating takeaway for us. That night on SNL required the most amount of rapid, high-pressure, chaotic backstage costume changes she had ever experienced in her life. Looking back now, she realizes that the sheer panic and the blinding speed of those dark SNL backstage corridors were the exact training ground that forged her stamina. It ultimately gave her the deep-seated confidence to know she could handle the relentless, exhaustive preparation and the grueling costume changes of the monumental Eras Tour. It all started in the dark hallways of Studio 8H.
Let's transition over to Section 2, the craft of songwriting. This is where things get really, really interesting. Transitioning from those early, frantic television performances, Seth offered a completely brilliant analysis of her shifting personas as an artist over the years. He pointed out how lucky they were to meet the 19-year-old Taylor back in the day, describing her back then as serious, sensitive, introspective, earnest, and stoic, basically embodying all the classic textbook characteristics of a true poet. But then, he contrasted that past version with her current era, noting that the new music and her current massive stage presence reveal a totally different side of her personality. Today's persona is mischievous. It's scandalous, sexy, fun, flirty, and hilarious. And Taylor was genuinely thrilled that Seth picked up on this deliberate evolution. She acknowledged how much she absolutely loves to marry the cerebral with the highly emotional in her songwriting process. Seth highlighted a specific track to illustrate this, the song Eldest Daughter. Taylor explained that she often uses specific, cynical modern internet vernacular purely to be satirical. Listen to this. The entire first verse of Eldest Daughter is written from the perspective of someone desperately trying to figure out how to speak using internet slang, utilizing phrases like apathy is hot and really leaning into meme culture. It's a deliberate act of assimilating to how culture tells us we are supposed to act, to prove me simply don't care about anything. But then, right in the pre-chorus, she drops the satirical internet slang entirely. The mask comes off. She reveals her true, authentic voice, admitting that she has been afflicted by a quote-unquote terminal uniqueness, and that she's been dying inside just from trying to seem cool. I mean, wow. How often do we all use internet sarcasm or irony just to mask how much we actually care about something? It's incredibly relatable. This deep dive into her craft brought them to a profound, really striking definition she offered during the interview, a concept she calls showgirl toughness. She elaborated on this brutal, old-school vaudeville style of toughness that she actively aspires to embody. It is a concept that goes so far beyond just hitting your marks on stage and singing the right notes on key. Think about it. To the audience, a showgirl presents pure glitz, glamour, and magic. It looks entirely effortless, floating and wonderfully frivolous. But the stark reality is that the true showgirl will smile radiantly on the outside, completely hiding an absolute hurricane that might be raging in her internal life. The audience has absolutely no idea of the grueling, back-breaking physical and emotional work required to make a 3-hour stadium performance feel light and fun. She applied this concept directly to her own life, noting the immense, exhaustive preparation she endured for the last 2.5 years just to prepare for her current tour. Think about the heavy psychological weight of that for a moment. You were out there smiling brightly, hitting every single mark for 70,000 screaming people, all while keeping the heavy lifting, the physical exhaustion, or maybe even an internal heartbreak completely invisible to the fans in the stadium. It's a staggering level of discipline. But listen, maintaining that intense, unrelenting showgirl toughness comes with an incredibly heavy cultural burden. It's a suffocating concept she refers to as cautious discretion. Taylor analyzed this deeply with Seth, describing it as a massive claustrophobic weight to carry around, especially from a very young age in the public eye. In her unique position in the industry, cautious discretion meant she felt forced to check every single move she made. She had to overthink every single word before she said it, all out of a paralyzing constant fear of misinterpretation by the media and the public. She observed the strict cultural aversion to actually seeming like you could need anything, or even worse, openly needing or wanting anyone. Society constantly tells us we are just supposed to effortlessly and accidentally end up with love, or accidentally end up on a perfect vacation without trying. The idea of actively expressing a genuine need for love, or openly displaying sadness, softness, or true vulnerability felt entirely off limits to her. She was essentially trapped in a cage of strategic, calculated perfection, completely unable to just breathe, make a mistake, and be human. So, how do you break out of that cage? Seth brought up a very specific, highly circulated paparazzi picture of Taylor and her fiancé driving away together in his drop-top car. For Seth, and frankly for millions of her fans around the world, that single image was a massive revelation. Why? Because it looked like that heavy, suffocating cage of cautious discretion was finally broken.
Taylor wholeheartedly agreed with him, revealing a deeply personal, touching detail. Her entire family reacted to that exact moment with absolute, overwhelming relief. They literally told her, "That's all we want for you." She described a pivotal, entirely liberating breakthrough when she met Travis. She suddenly realized, I could be a person who could have romantic whims. She could finally have these dreams openly in the daylight without apologizing to anyone for them. She actually compared this liberating, joyous feeling to the utopian happy place featured in the classic movie Happy Gilmore. You know, that bizarre but highly effective place of mental escape you go to in times of severe stress, pressure, anxiety, or chaos. Well, that exact feeling of unapologetic joy completely inspired the sincere and incredibly joyful chorus of her song Wishlist. She finally found her happy place in real life.
Section 3 is coming up right now. Let's talk about Easter eggs and legacy. With this incredible newfound freedom in her personal life, Seth pivoted the conversation to ask how she absorbs the overwhelming, literally deafening reaction to a record release these days. Taylor shared that she views her art fundamentally as a mirror. She respects that people have highly subjective opinions about her music, but her ultimate overarching goal is to reflect the listener's own life back to them. She explained that whatever you are actively going through in your own life at this exact moment will dictate whether you relate to the music she is putting out. She absolutely loves seeing fans say they used to relate strictly to the Fearless era, but because of shifting, painful, or joyful life experiences, they are now completely obsessed with Evermore, or how they suddenly deeply understand the anger and redemption of Reputation after going through a difficult betrayal of their own. It's a living, evolving legacy that shifts right alongside her fans' lives. And maintaining that deep, intricate connection requires a staggering amount of meticulous planning. Seth praised the music videos she directed for the new album, and Taylor revealed the sheer unbelievable scale of her production design process. She admitted to having a physical storyboard list with over 100 distinct hidden Easter eggs meant for that single video. She methodically went through her list, crossing them off one by one alongside her production team. These Easter eggs aren't just for fun. They're a dedicated, obsessive nod to her past art, her current art, and the highly classified future plans she has brewing. Over 100. Can you believe that? To give you a perfect example of this, take the number 87 painted on the door in the video, which is, of course, a direct, undeniable nod to Travis Kelce's jersey number. Seth described her entire release strategy and this massive lore building as a form of ordered chaos. And Taylor agreed completely. She actively welcomes that exact kind of chaos. She noted that as long as the fans are having fun analyzing the art, breaking down the frames second by second, and hunting for all those hidden meanings, it will remain incredibly fun for her to plot and plan them in secret. Furthermore, she dropped a highly pragmatic, deeply savvy show business rule regarding all this ordered chaos. She said, if it is the first week of her massive album release and people are out there saying either her name or her album title, even if they are just arguing on the internet about an Easter egg painted on a door, they're ultimately helping the work. It drives the cultural conversation, it drives the streaming numbers, and it proves she is completely, undeniably in control of the narrative. It's absolutely brilliant marketing built on genuine fan connection. Now, getting all that meticulously planned art to the fans starts in the deeply intimate, highly vulnerable space of the recording studio. Taylor shared some amazing insights into her highly collaborative, deeply trusting process with her co-writers, Max and Yoan. She described their studio atmosphere as very late night and entirely stream of consciousness. She actually keeps a recorder going constantly while they write, capturing the raw, fun, mischievous, and electric energy of bouncing lines off one another in real time. She recounted these frantic, exciting moments of interrupting the musical flow just to shout, wait, run it back. What did you say 2 minutes ago? That second note was better. It is a raw, in-the-moment creation of melodies. You can literally feel the lightning in a bottle energy when she talks about it. And incredibly, rather than keeping this a secret, she took these highly intimate, completely unpolished, raw recordings and released them directly to her fans as voice memos on iTunes. This allowed her fans to pull back the curtain and actually hear the genius ideas being formed entirely from scratch. Who else does that? It's such a gift to the people who love her work. Moving into section 4, we're going to look at a major shift in perspective. As the interview progressed, we really have to set the visual scene of the room for a moment because the atmosphere is absolutely vital to understanding what happens next. From the moment she stepped onto the stage, the energy was light, palpable, and incredibly warm. Taylor was dressed so elegantly in a cream-colored blazer and a delicate sparkling necklace. She had greeted Seth with a massive, genuine smile and a familiar, friendly hug. Early on, they joked around effortlessly. with Taylor playfully admitting to the audience that even with all her recent time off from touring, she was still not great at making pancakes, which sent the crowd into warm fits of laughter. The conversation was refreshing. It focused on her enjoying time away, spending time with family, and just enjoying quiet mornings. But then, the tone of the room fundamentally changed. Seth leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping, becoming incredibly gentle and highly respectful. He prefaced his question by acknowledging that she has always been incredibly careful about protecting the people she loves, telling her he didn't want to ask anything she was uncomfortable answering. But then he stated simply, "Marriage changes people." And he asked her directly, eye to eye, "Has it changed you?" Guys, the entire massive late-night television studio suddenly fell dead silent. I mean, you could hear a pin drop. The air was entirely sucked out of the room. Taylor paused for several long, dramatic seconds. She simply looked out at the silent audience, gathering her thoughts, and took a slow, heavy, deliberate breath before finally breaking the silence. Once she finally spoke, she delivered a quote with such deep, profound emotional weight that it anchored the entire interview. It's the moment everyone is talking about. She looked right at Seth and said softly, "It helped me realize that happiness doesn't always have to be loud." The room remained completely still, just hanging on her every single word. I want you to let that sit for a second. Really think about it. Think about the profound weight of a woman who has lived her entire adult life deafened by the loudest roars on planet Earth. A woman who has spent decades chasing the absolute peak of human extraordinary achievement, realizing that the real prize was quiet. She confessed that for so many years of her life, she had been relentlessly chasing moments that felt extraordinary. The massive stadium cheers, the chart-topping records, the monumental career peaks that made the front pages of every paper in the world. But she had finally come to the realization that after years of running that exhausting, endless race, she had found a deep, lasting, unshakable sense of peace, far away from the spotlight, quietly behind a locked door. And that brings us to our final section, Section 5, the beauty of the ordinary. She is leaning into a genuine, grounded happiness that she now radiates effortlessly. You can see it in her eyes. She told Seth that her absolute favorite moments now are actually the completely ordinary ones. She is actively embracing a quiet life, completely away from the relentless pace, the exhaustive physical preparation, and the chaotic heights of global touring that defined her showgirl persona for so many decades. Seth listened to her intently, visibly moved by her vulnerability in this moment, allowing her the space to explain exactly what this new, quiet life looks like. And the details she provided are just incredibly, wonderfully mundane. She listed off these highly relatable, completely unscripted moments. Waking up and making coffee together in the morning, spending a lazy afternoon just watching football on the couch, having playful, silly arguments over what movie they are going to watch, or sitting there laughing together because neither of them can decide where to order takeout dinner from. Picture that. A billionaire pop star, arguably the most famous woman on earth right now, finding utter utopia in debating Chinese versus Italian takeout in her living room. The studio audience chuckled warmly at this, clearly recognizing their own daily lives reflected in her words. Taylor looked down for a brief, reflective moment before looking back up and stating firmly, honestly, those little moments became everything. Seth, his eyes reflecting genuine emotion, softly replied, "I love that." And Taylor nodded, radiating a deep, profound peace, and agreed, "I do too." We've traced an incredible, poignant evolution today, haven't we? We started with the hilariously chaotic story of a pet snake stuck in a wall while a guy with an axe chopped up a vintage cupboard. We looked back at the exhaustive, frantic boot camp of her early SNL days back in 2009. We deeply analyzed the heavy, calculated burden of cautious discretion and the protective armor of showgirl toughness. And finally, we arrived at the profound, quiet relief of a grounded, ordinary love. She has left behind the desperate, exhausting need to constantly chase the extraordinary, and instead she found her truest happiness in the absolute simplicity of making coffee and ordering takeout on a couch. So I want to leave you with this thought to take away from our explainer today. In a world that constantly pushes us to be loud, to be extraordinary, and to perform for everyone around us, what are the quiet, ordinary moments in your own life that you are holding on to?